It is the first of our presidential interviews with certainly the man who's been in the news the most over the last number of days, Senator David Norris. Senator Norris, welcome to a studio you know so well.
I do indeed. I mean, I'm the comeback kid here in News Talk, as I'm the comeback kid in the election. I'm only sorry, George, that I didn't put at least €1 on myself. I'm not a betting man. When it was 10,000 to 1 in one of the bookmakers that I wouldn't get back in, I did it. So I take challenges.
All right. Now, tell me, why do you want to be president? Don't tell me why you should be. Or anything.
No, I tell you exactly why I want to be. I want to because, number one, I would love the job. Number two, I think I could do a good job. I believe I could represent the people of Ireland properly and with dignity. And most importantly, can I just say this? All the other candidates have admirable qualities. You won't find me saying one bad word about any of them, because I said at the beginning, George, as you know, and you remember that day in the window of the shop in Grafton Street, I made a commitment. I would fight on my strengths, not on anybody else's weaknesses.
Okay.
But...
why do you want to be?
But if the coalition, they have a number of candidates, decent, excellent people, if the coalition wins the park, and I've heard one party saying we've never had it, it's our turn. In my opinion, it's never a party's turn. If they have it, they have the county councils, the Shannon, the Dáil, inevitably, of course, the Army, Navy, Air Force and Police. They also have the banks, which they bought against my vote.
Now. I asked you what you want to be.
Because I think it's important, the conclusion of that, see, George, is that I think it's important that the people have a voice, at least, that has a degree of independence.
Okay. Now, can I ask, apparently it's politically incorrect to talk about people's age, but since I started watching The X Factor, they always ask the candidate their age. Now, 67?
67, absolutely.
Right. Now, the American president has a vice president.
Yes.
All previous presidents have had a consort. Is
yes,
that the word?
That's right.
You're the English expert. As a consort. You're going to be single man in there.
Yes,
What about the level, the workload? You're nobody to share it with.
Well, I do indeed. I mean, I will. Of course I will. I mean, I have had Miriam Gordon-Smith in my Senate office for the last 16 years, the most incredible woman on earth. And I can tell you this, Miriam and I were the entire team for the Senate election, and I got the highest vote ever recorded, just 2 people.
Okay.
If I'm honoured by the people of Ireland with their choice, I will certainly be asking Miriam to come with me.
Would you accept, you want it, and you now have somebody who's going to support you and everything, would you accept that at the root of the fitness for office is the question of just judgment? Would you accept
I think that's a very important consideration, yes.
First question on judgment.
Yes.
You left the race.
Yes.
And you re-entered the race.
Yes.
What happened in between leaving and re-entering? Same David Norris, it's the same guy who did all the things he did. Why this judgment change?
Well, George, can I tell you, I think that's a really good question, and I'm certainly going to answer it. Anybody with judgment considers the situations that exist at the time. At the time when I withdrew, some members of my team had left. Some members of my Oireachtas support were beginning to leave. I thought it would be wrong if I exposed those wonderful people who courageously stood by me. And may I say, if my judgment was wrong, so was the judgment of every political commentator, editor and journalist in this country. But they realized also that the situation had changed. You don't make the same judgment in a different situation. My judgment was sound then. It's sound now because the volume of people, I mean, already there's 24,000 people on my Facebook, Norris for president.
But there's 29,000 people on my Twitter, but I'm not going for president, you know, so I mean,
but
come on now, Senator, come on.
That's one thing.
You're turning stonewalling into an art form. I mean, let's get to the root of the matter here, which really surprises many of us.
Okay, well, can I answer that question, George? And I'll tell you, you asked me about going back. I think it's very important to notice that even when my name had been removed, I was the top person in the polls, or at the very worst, number 2. Now, that tells you something. Right. That tells you something. The Irish people have made a judgment, and they would like me. And 67% want to be back on the ballot paper.
But I'm going to talk about Richard Nixon in a minute.
Yes,
but he did say, if you can't stand the heat in the kitchen, you shouldn't be there. Like, the heat in the kitchen got a bit hot for you. But I'd like to talk about Nixon, because what bedeviled his presidency was the tapes. And whether you like it or not, the letters are going to bedevil your efforts to become president. And I have to say, it was very convenient to have legal advice telling you not to release them.
Well, it was very serious legal advice indeed, George.
Well, nobody else concurs with your legal advice. All the media have traipsed around the law library to find somebody to concur with your advice, and they can't find it.
But I didn't quite hear that. Did you say you've traipsed around?
No, the media. If you read, they've traipsed around.
Well, I wonder if they did.
I have too. I have too.
To this, Noel Whelan took a very interesting and middle-of-the-road position on Vincent Brown's show, where I got a very good battering for all this.
Somebody else said to you, this
He's
is
legally qualified.
This is news talk. Come on.
I know.
Tell me why. You have said privacy. You've said confidentiality.
Yes.
You've said, professional something or other. These are all very useful words.
They're very important.
Nobody understands them. No, like, there's no issue of privacy here, because you wrote the letters. The privacy are your issue. You broke privacy by writing the letters. You broke confidentiality by writing the letters. So it's for you to decide whether to release them or not.
I'm sorry, George, I don't quite understand. Are you saying that every time you write a letter, and particularly one addressed to somebody's lawyers, and a particularly marked confidential, which in some circumstances there were, you mean to say that you break confidentiality by the...
No, because you're not. But you're not like, the point is, you're running for president. You're running for the highest office in the land. Can I remind you that on the Late Late Show, you consistently talked about a letter. Suddenly we discovered there was a truckload of letters.
Oh, come on, George. You have a very small truck. If it only fits, I think there's 6 or 7.
Yeah, but you didn't say the letter.
A truckload.
You did say the letter. But there were others.
But that's what we were talking about. I released the substantive letter, the longest letter, the letter with the most significant detail that was relevant. Now, other letters contain material relevant to a case that was heard in camera. Israeli law and Irish law both are the inheritors of English common law.
But you weren't at the case in camera.
Of course I wasn't.
So therefore, you wouldn't be writing any letters about in camera. It doesn't hold up as a defence.
Yes,
your defence is full of holes. I
don't think it is, George. I think you are a very good contrarian. Can I tell you this?
No, I'm not. I'm asking you the question that people want to know.
Right.
Is like, that these are other letters. What do we not know that is forming our judgment of your ability to be president? And that's not me being... This isn't about who's playing fly half for Ireland. This is about the highest office in the land.
And now I can answer?
Yes.
Thank you very much, George. Well, first of all, in terms of privacy, what about the identity of the young lad who is now in his mid-30s? What about his anonymity in an age of the internet? Is it fair? Is it right that the wounds should be reopened, this horrible thing ripped up again?
But we've seen letters, forever we've seen letters with stuff blocked out in them. We've seen that forever.
Yes, and I can tell you, George, I think with the greatest respect, the next thing will be you be coming in and saying, what's blocked out, why can't we see it?
No, because we would understand exactly your concerns for somebody's reputation. But what I'm concerned about, see, is that I'm trying to find a thread here of consistency. When you were on the Great Late Late, you said, I was appalled, I was shocked,
yes.
I knew nothing about this.
I didn't.
But you wrote the letter you released then says that you wrote a letter to Mr. Yishak's lawyers requesting that you should be called to give evidence. To my surprise, I was not called to give evidence, which I think would have helped the court. So if that, you must have known all about this, despite saying in Late Late you didn't know.
Well, you can't actually understand. It's a very complicated thing, but I'll answer that point for you. Ezra and I are close, intimate relationship ceased after about 3 years. But I loved him, and to some extent I still love him. And I went there, painful though it was.
But you said you didn't know anything about it.
No, I want to answer your question. I'm explaining to you what I knew. And I used to sleep in the living room on a made-up bed. And phone calls would come in early in the morning. And I didn't know what they were about. I discovered subsequently that they had something to do with this case. Now, I can't say any more than that, but that's one example. I'm saying no more,
all right,
because I said I won't, and I'm not going to. You're saying I'm inconsistent. I'm telling you, I'm fully consistent. I'm motivated by principle, and the deepest principle that is throughout this horrible case, which involved real people, it changed their lives, it left deep scars. I don't want to be the person to rip those scars open again. And I want to say one thing, and please let me say this. Every time anything to do with what is perceived as child abuse or age of consent and stuff comes up, and my record is sterling in this. If anybody wants to look at my achievements, my practical achievements in Shannon Aaron, they're on the record, they can be read. But every time this comes up in this kind of sensationalized context, it causes wounds in this country, and I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart to any person who is a victim of abuse.
But your record isn't clear. I mean,
my record is very clear indeed on the Shannon.
You have, well, maybe in the Shannon, but in the printed media, you have surprising views, let's say, on the issue.
They surprised me, some of them, when I read them.
All right. Well, maybe, but you also, I put this to you, you wrote a letter in defense of somebody accused of statutory rape. Do you think...
No, I'm sorry, George, that is completely incorrect.
What you said here is, in the letter you released, I travelled to Israel specifically for the hearing in May 1997. I was present in the court when the case was heard and the judgment read. I therefore personally witnessed some troubling anomalies in the majority verdict, such as the constant insistence by the presiding judge that there was absolutely no difference between this case and a similar case involving heterosexual relations. So of course you wrote a letter in defence.
Yeah, but what you said, no, I did not. What you completely misunderstood. Right, well, please, if I can answer what you said. You said I wrote it during the course of the trial. And if you listen back to the tape, that is actually what you said. Perhaps you didn't mean to. I was there at the sentencing hearing. And again, you made a very important point. One judge acquitted Ezra. And that's in that letter.
Now, let me ask you this question.
So I'm totally... Will you accept that I'm consistent there? All right. But it's very complicated and very difficult to understand.
All right.
But you do accept that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Here we are. We're 10 minutes into this.
Yes,
interview. We're still talking about letters. And the problem for you, do you not accept that from now to polling day, no interview is going to take place? You're not going to be asked about those letters until you put it to bed. Well, just as Nixon faced consistently questions about tapes. And until he released them, which finished his presidency, and it may do the same for you, but nevertheless, until you release them, this is not going to go away.
Well, I mean, let's keep a sense of proportion. I mean, the Nixon tapes and a letter of clemency, which is a perfectly legit, is provided in every law, and I broke no regulation. I broke no Oroptus regulation. That has been complained about as well. But yeah, so let's stop it there, because I can hear people switching off already. And let's
It won't stop. It won't stop.
Well, if it won't, I think people... Listen, I've just come from Blanchardstown. I met over 100 people. This story is getting no traction, whatever, at least in the shopping
Well,
centre.
it has traction, but can I say, the last opinion poll showed you at 21%.
Yes.
That's only 1 in 5 of the Irish people. It also shows, more troubling for you, that you're not getting traction in terms of transfers. So it is affecting you.
No, that's
the numbers
because
are fact.
That was a situation that we were addressing by going around the countryside. And I want to tell you this evening, I'm going to be out doing what I do best, meeting people in every single one of the 26 counties. Martin McGuinness says he's going to do the 32 counties. That's a brave exercise because 6 of those counties do not have a vote. I'll do the 26 counties. And can I tell you, every day I said I'd give a good news story. Yesterday was the salmon back in the Tolka after 100 years. I also, by the way, got a message from James Joyce. Now, I'm not a spiritualist, I'm not a medium, but I wrote a book, I co-edited a book in 1982, that's nearly 40 years ago, and for the first time in years I got a royalty on the day of the nomination. Okay. And today we have two wonderful stories. It's over 100 years since Eason's opened in O'Connell Street, a wonderful bookshop. They employed Sean O'Casey. He was fired for refusing to take his cap off to receive his wages. And the best one of all, George, the man of 100 years who 2 years ago underwent an operation, and he had a wager with his surgeon that he wouldn't live to see 100. He was delighted to lose it.
That won't get your vote, Senator. I'm afraid it won't get your vote, but this question might. I'd ask your opinion. I ask your opinion.
Yes,
because
certainly.
Quite rightly you said writing a letter of clemency. You wrote a letter of clemency in a case of...
After the conviction.
Yeah, right. You wrote a letter of clemency.
Yes.
I would ask you, what would your opinion be if Archbishop Dermot Martin wrote a letter of clemency about a priest accused of statutory rape? How long do you think he'd last as Archbishop of Dublin? And is there any
I would certainly hope he would last. And I think he should last. Now, can I tell you this? It might surprise people. When Archbishop Connell, Desmond Connell, before he was Cardinal Connell, visited some of these priests in Mountjoy jail, the newspaper for which I was writing had a headline, an article savagely critical of him, and it said, "Connell in visit to pervert priests." And I wrote my article in the Evening Herald saying that this was wrong because... No, I must... Please let me finish,
I'm
George.
letting you finish.
Because, first of all, he's entitled to his proper title, Archbishop Connell. He's not a criminal. Neither am I. I've been made guilty by association. Where exactly do they think Jesus Christ would be? I don't often wear my religion on my sleeve, but I'm a very devout, believing Christian. I go to church every single Sunday. And can I tell you, I know, because in the Bible, in the Gospel, it says, I was naked and you clothed me. I was hungry and you fed me. I was in prison and you comforted me. Archbishop Desmond Connell, and I said that in print, was perfectly right. He was following the steps of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ wasn't popular either in his day.
In 1997, though, you did write those letters. You did actually suggest, even at that time, that you were a future candidate for the presidency. I mean, this has been in your head for a long time. This didn't suddenly... This wasn't visited you like James Joyce's shilling.
Well, are we on webcam, George?
Absolutely.
Well, can they see me? Because I hope they can, because I'm smiling. You said I was a candidate, or I was going to be a candidate.
No, you were indicated.
I was indicated rather than I indicated. I was approached. And I knew at that stage it would go nowhere, but I said, fine, test the water. And I went off abroad on holiday. That wasn't a serious issue. But can I tell you this? I'm human. I'm very human and I'm fallible. I was very flattered to have been considered at that time.
All right. Can I talk to you about Michael D?
Yes.
Your fellow candidate.
Yes.
You had a very warm meeting on the steps of the council. I think it is fair to say that perhaps, and it's only a perhaps, without his intervention, you might not have won Dublin City Council. He very generously, as you admitted...
it wasn't an admission. It was an absolute statement I was delighted to make.
Absolutely, yes. I was just wondering, would you be recommending to your followers to give their number twos to Michael D. Higgins?
Well, at this stage, I'm trying very hard to get as many number ones and as many number twos, and if Michael D's number twos come to me, then I'm very happy for my number twos to go to him. But I'm not saying anything, I'm not making any commitments, but can I tell you this? You mentioned the question of Vice President. Michael D. and myself are very old comrades and friends, and I have the greatest respect and affection for him. I wish there was a post of Vice President, so that whichever one of us won it, the other could be their helpmate in this job, which is so important at this time. And I think if the Irish people get either of us, they will have a good candidate. I'm not saying the others are anything wrong about them. I'm not disparaging anybody. That's not my style. I'm not attacking journalists, some of whom have been less than charitable. I'm not attacking any opponents. But I'm so proud of the Irish people that out of the 3,000 emails which faced me when I got back from Cyprus, 3 were negative. And I've had green scapulars, novenas, God knows what. And the most moving of all was an editorial in a parish magazine written by a priest
What about the council meeting? It was interesting that even Oisin Quinn, for instance, of Labour, who were supporting you, in that council meeting, he said that your campaign is devoid of vision or ideas.
Well, how does he know?
I know, that's what he said.
Well, I mean, I don't know Oisin Quinn, but
you need
that's up to him. I presume I got it, but I'm not quite sure. But can I tell you something, George? I was there. Every single person, and some of them spoke quite strongly against me, every single person applauded me. Okay. That's decency, that's good behaviour, right. And I tell you, can I say...
Well, we've always been a well-mannered people.
Yes, we have, and including yourself. And can I say, I was very, very honoured to be nominated by a great Dubliner. Yes. Mannix Flynn. And if Mannix Flynn knows the sterling quality that I have and knows my record in defending people against abuse, particularly children, sexual, psychological or physical, which I abhor, if Mannix Flynn knows that in his heart, and if Mannix was prepared to nominate me, then... You know, I would think it would take a lot to challenge that.
But the question of vision, yes. You know, and I think this is a question I would ask every one of the seven of you.
Yeah?
You all seem to have an exaggerated opinion of what you can actually do. This is a constitutional office, no different from Elizabeth II of England, where, you know, I'm sure you'll open a lot of community halls and so on. But in essence, you are hidebound by the Constitution in terms of what you can do. You can't tell Enda Kenny, don't raise taxes or don't cut unemployment benefits.
Of course not.
So you can't do anything. Like, you can't...
But did you notice, George, the significance of the visit of the Queen? A titular head of state to another titular head of state? That has transformed the atmosphere. And don't disparage those visits to places where people look after people with intellectual difficulties. I can't tell you it means an enormous amount to them. No. I'm only a backbench senator. I got a note from County Kerry back up to my office within half an hour of a visit there, which said there was the first, and I'm quoting, important person. I don't think I'm particularly important, but they did because I had the handle of senator, to visit them in 11 and a half years.
Yeah, but the thing is, nobody has suggested, least of all me, because I understand how important it is. But the point is, no presidential candidate is saying, I think it's very important to visit community centres. They're saying, literally, some are suggesting they're going to get jobs for the country. Some are suggesting they're going to change the face of it. Some are suggesting they're going to change the name of the Norris. I mean, all these things are nonsense.
Well,
the reality
I'm not going to comment on them. No, but those are their views.
Vision.
But yes, there is vision. Of course there is vision. And can I tell you something? Irish people have vision. Other people think in black and white. Irish people dream in colour. And that's why we have Twitter, we have Google. That's why, and it's not just the literary thing. Let's forget about James Joyce, Yeats, Butler, all the rest of these people. The other good news story, $1 million for the Jack Yeats painting. But we gave the world Boyle's law. Every child on this planet learns it. I sat at lunch with Ernest Walton, who split the atom. George Boole from your city of Cork. Wasn't that wonderful? Aren't you proud of George Boole, Boolean algebra? I can celebrate those two.
Can I just say to you in closing the interview?
Yes.
We are similar in terms of the length of time we spent on the planet. Boyle's law isn't going to get you elected. What is going to get you elected senator is that the Irish people believe you are open and honest, and that the Irish people believe that you have judgment to be President of Ireland. That's what they believe, and that is what, not me, what I only am one, what people are going to ask you from now until you clear the major impediment for your candidacy. What is in those letters that makes you so afraid to publish them? Because there is no legal advice. We can find no legal advice that says you have privacy issues, you have confidentiality issues, legal ones as opposed to, you know, how you feel about it.
No, but you have no legal
ones.
I respect the law.
You have no legal
ones. Oh, indeed I have. No, both Israeli... Well, all right, fine.
Well, fine. Who gave you the advice?
But I've given you these things. But I just want to thank you for something, George, if I may. Because you said something very important there. You said the Irish people believe you're honest.
I didn't.
You did. You may not have meant to.
No, what I said
thank
is...
you for saying it anyway.
Okay. I believe you're honest. I believe you're honest.
And
but I question...
Do you believe also, do you accept that my life has been an open book in a way that has never been for any other person in this country, in political life? Do you believe that I've been asked questions consistently over the last 30 years that they wouldn't have dared to ask another politician? And I've answered them honestly. And I've answered them forthrightly, but I will protect people from collateral damage. I'll take any pain that's going...
No, but you didn't say that. You didn't say that. You said, and I can remember it, you said, I'm taking legal advice. You said, in fact, if I went to the doctor, and I don't get sick very often, but if I went to the doctor and he told me I'd take his advice. Now, you said, you didn't say, if you said yesterday, I don't want to hurt Mr. X, Mr. Y, or Mr. Z, because what I said would come back to haunt them. I think a lot of us might have said, you know, I understand that, because we've all written letters about people that we wouldn't like to see in the public domain. You didn't. You said, on legal advice. You know, so you can't have your cake and eat it, Senator. Either you did it on the basis of legal advice, or you did it on the basis of humanity. Which is it?
George, that was a wonderful speech. But at the end of it, I don't think you realized... It's not a question of having your cake and eating it. You're going to eat it not just in one bite. I said both. If you didn't hear the first, I'm very surprised.
But there isn't...
I made it clear all the way along. Do you remember the phrase collateral damage? It's in my resignation speech, or my withdrawal speech, collateral damage.
But
it's in every statement that I've made. And on top of that, I have legal advice. Now, if you can change that legal advice, and I'm not sure that you have a degree in law...
Okay, can I ask you finally?
Yes, of course.
If you hadn't got legal advice, would you publish them?
That's a question that is impossible to answer, because it's hypothetical, George, and I'd be dishonest if I answered it. So can I just say, very honestly, I don't know. I can't answer it. I'm sorry. I can't answer it. And that's an honest answer.
All right. So we're not going to see them, come hell or high water.
Well, never say never.
All right.
I just don't know at the moment, but I have to protect vulnerable people. And I've said it from the beginning. Collateral damage. It's not fair. I'll take it on the chin, but I'm not going to stand by and see other people being hit by friendly fire, as they call it, on my behalf. I'll take the bullets.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Good luck to you in the campaign.
Thank you very much.
Senator David Norris, independent candidate for the presidency.